Now I'll call this meeting to order.
All right, thank you.
And I'm James Mack from the Shelburne PSAP, member of the task force. And we have Michael Wright. And I'll let everybody else introduce themselves since we're so small.
Sorry. Michael Wright, Chief of Calix Ambulance.
Thank you. And from Televate, we have Elizabeth Herring, Rick Burke, and myself, Dominic Arcuri. And looks like we have a couple other people on the line, Michelle Hunt, and somebody just joined.
Jim Cronin.
Jim Cronin just joined. And welcome. Jim,
and move on to approval of agenda. Does anybody want any changes for the agenda? Hearing none, except previous minute notes. Have you read them, Mike?
Yes.
I'll take a motion to
Make a motion
accept
to
them.
approve. Yep, make a motion to approve.
All right, seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Say it. Aye. And move on to the objectives. Over to
all
you,
right,
Don.
thank you, Jim. I'll take over and take a look at where we are. Just a reminder, of course, this is the Tier 2 working group addressing technology and shared systems-based regionalization. Our schedule is shown here. We've adjusted it some along the way, and I have some items in yellow also that are suggested additional changes, which we'll address at the next task force meeting next week. Tier 2 is shown here. We anticipate wrapping up our work here by the end of the month, which would be next week. And we have currently asked to be on the agenda at the task force to present our findings. So that's all good, and we'll move ahead to our objective. As we review this each meeting, the objective for this working group is to determine the priorities and potential recommendations related to the key areas of technology and shared systems to present to the full task force for their consideration. And there are a number of items highlighted in green below that. All of these items, work items, technology areas have been discussed through previous meetings. And as a reminder, we have discussed the options presented for each of these technology areas that were presented by Mission Critical Partners in their system planning report. Those were options for consideration by the task force. The task force is reviewing those based on the working group recommendations here to provide the recommendations for the task force. Of course, any recommendations in the report are those of MCPs, and the task force is working to develop their own to provide to the Vermont legislature. So what we plan to do today is review again each of these work items. We have summarized them previously as to what the recommendation of this working group would be, and to prepare to present those to the full task force, which would be next week. We have updated those recommendations based on some preliminary cost estimates, and as well as an approach to develop a implementation strategy for each of those. So we'll present the the framework for the implementation strategy as we go through the discussion. First, we have a number of action items remaining that we'd like to address today. And I'll go into presentation mode, I guess, at this point to make that a little bigger, hopefully for everyone to read. The previous action items not shown here have been resolved. Hopefully we can resolve a few more of them. Action item 7 was to look into the data, the geographic data that has been accumulated to date within the dispatch system and at the various PSAPs and dispatch centers. The question was, will those data sets be able to be migrated when the E911 board switches to Rapid SOS? And we have investigated that. The answer is yes, most of that will be migrated. The GeoCom data that is currently in use will be migrated over, and additional data will be addressed individually at the individual communication centers with the E911 board. So unless there are further questions on that, I believe that can be closed out.
Yes.
Thanks, Jim. Action item 8 is we note that that'll be ongoing as we continue to look at existing LMR systems and upgrade plans that are ongoing throughout the state. We have information on a number of those and have begun mapping that information, trying to identify what potential existing systems can be used for the LMR approach to put together a system of systems to effectively cover the state. So we'll keep even once this formal working group effort completes, we'll keep working that, and that'll be ongoing. Action item 12 refers to the cybersecurity vendors to find out what local PSAPs and local vendors are doing with regards to cybersecurity. And I think this was a couple of people were looking into this. Rick and Jim were looking at it from different perspectives. Any updates?
I have no update. I've been waiting for my tech guy to get back to me on some information.
All right, thanks. Rick?
On my end, I reached out to Top Floor. They did return my call, but I haven't been able to get back to them, so that's on me. I will have a conversation with them, and anything of value that I learn, I can share via email to the workforce members.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Action item 13 was regarding one of the work items regarding mapping that we were discussing and whether or not there was a potential interim solution. As a long-term solution was discussed to implement more robust mapping with a new CAD system. An interim solution could be to further use the Rapid SOS platform that will be incorporated in the fall of this year. So the recommendation was that should be recommended as an interim solution. So I believe we can close that action item. And action item 14 was regarding going through each of the recommendations, which we're going to review moving forward here during today's meeting, and estimate required budget. So that is in process. Hopefully, once we get through this, we'll be essentially there. There may be one or two still ongoing, but for the most part, we are attempting to address that. Any other questions or comments on the action items? Okay, moving forward into the meat of our meeting today is the recommendations based on the different technology areas. We have a number of slides that address those, and I believe you have seen those at the last meeting. Prior to, yes, sorry about that. We will address each of those in individual slides, in addition to the comments section there as to which option is preferred. We are also working on a strategy for implementation for each of these areas. Here you'll see a framework for that without any specific detail at this point, but we are working through those for each of the different technology areas. So we will summarize what the working group recommendation would be, assign a priority to that, to each of these items. You'll see here the CAD item. We think everyone would agree is one of the higher priorities, and put together an implementation strategy, identify what components are required, potential capital investment, the resources or workforce requirements, and any potential investment to maintain that workforce, and an implementation schedule. Any questions or thoughts on this strategy for further documenting our recommendations?
No, I like that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you do, Jim. Our rationale behind this was, having, here's a recommendation, and have the workforce, workforce presented to the task force, a working group presented to the task force. That's fine. But what we feel is also important is how are we going to do this? I mean, you get to the legislature, we're going to say, okay, we need you to do this and do that and provide this and provide that. But we would like to, our goal here is to give you a strategy, a step-by-step approach. Here are the activities that need to be accomplished in order to facilitate the implementation of our recommendations, so that we're just not coming to the table with just here's what we'd like you to support. Here's how we're going to implement it. And so, this is basically a per line item there, a plan. And so these, our goal really is to provide an actionable plan, a step-by-step approach that could be undertaken, so that we just don't come to the table with here's what we'd like you to do, here's what we'd like you to do, and here's how we are going to accomplish it, and what our projected cost for the capital, the infrastructure, or a component level investment, and then here's our workforce requirements, both from that we maybe it's voluntary and some are going to have to be paid, of course. This way, under this approach, it's more of a comprehensive strategy and not just a recommendation.
And Rick, just to complete that, so our plan would be to present this framework to the task force as well. And once the working group also presents its recommendations, then assuming those recommendations are given approval to move forward, then we would work to further populate this strategy here for each of those, so that the task force can have that with their recommendation to the legislature.
Yeah, and of course we have to give consideration to what elements of the strategy statement can be public and what might not be might not be able to make public at this stage of the game. But I don't have a feel. I've gone through this. I don't have a feel for that yet. But that's something we don't plan on putting anything here that's going to be that's sensitive. But I don't know what I don't know yet.
Okay, thanks. And moving on to each of the work areas. And addressing these individually, the core data transfer regarding CAD, we talked through this, and there was a preference to implement a CAD to CAD interface, but for the PSAPs to continue the process of transferring the caller to the dispatch center. our comments related to this was that that's the approach we want to take, and then the PSAPs still want to be able to have, or the dispatch centers still want to be able to have the opportunity to talk to the caller. As far as costs for this, we see this being implemented as part of the CAD system, because the next recommendation is to develop a request for a proposal for a statewide CAD system that supports all public safety disciplines. So as part of that process, we would
You went mute again, Dom. We can't hear you.
incorporate it in that.
Yeah, we temporarily lost your audio.
I'm sorry. Yes, regarding the second one, essential public safety discipline functionality, again, moving towards a RFP for a statewide CAD. We have discussed with a potential vendor for a CAD system, and actually they were able to provide rough order magnitude pricing for that. And the CAD system itself was actually less than $2 million anticipated for what we would anticipate to cover the entire state with implementation at it would be a hybrid approach that would have servers on premises at 2 of the current PSAPs, so that there was redundancy, and then each of those would support the other PSAPs and dispatch centers to provide CAD functionality throughout the state. So actually, this ROM cost, in our opinion, came in quite reasonable, and we were happy with what we saw there. On the other hand, to add a different RMS to that system, that was a sizable amount, estimated at $4.5 million.
It's important to share also that these numbers would be these costs would be spread out over 5 years.
Oh, yes. That's very important, right?
Yeah,
that
so
less
these
than
numbers,
$2
according
million,
to this, yeah,
right, covers a
And the
5-year period.
the cost of the records management or the records management system, is that multi-discipline,
yes,
police, fire, EMS?
yes, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, in fact, these are conversations we had with the vendor. We reached out to a number of vendors, but we could get one who was willing to give us, this support on this short time frame. We had multiple conversations with them, and so and also this is a vendor that the state knows without going into more detail. But anyway, this we thought that the CAD, so we wanted to be sure that the CAD supports all disciplines and RMS all disciplines as well. So it's a very important point, important question.
And that CAD approach could interface with the existing records management, so it could interface with Valcor if that was desired as well.
Oh,
Yeah, that's also a good point. So what we asked for and putting this quote together, this again, this is a ROM quote, but putting this together, we wanted an API or at least a capability to connect to existing CADs in the state, as well as to connect to Valcor. And so that's achievable in this architecture. And this architecture here also includes, for the CAD and RMS, mobile clients. So this included 1,200 mobile clients. So the CAD is not just the CAD that would be for I think this is for 80 terminals. And for all PSAPs and dispatch centers, and 1,000 or 1,200 mobile clients as well.
Right.
So, and again, RMS is, both of these numbers are spread out over 5 years.
That's right. So the upfront cost for the CAD was significantly less than that. That was actually under $1 million, and then an annual fee for the next 4 years. But the aggregate was comfortably under $2 million.
And so Michelle put a note in there talking about support SaaS software that we feel is a great disadvantage losing on premise. So we, that's a valid concern. We made sure that in this, and we were looking at 5 nines reliability on this, and we would think best that this would be anchored over the fiber connectivity for the PSAPs. Connecting the PSAPs there's a robust fiber plant in place for the dispatch centers. We'd have to look at that more carefully. But that a lot of the vendors are also talking about going to a full
cloud solution.
Yeah, they really want to get out of the business of having to do things. It's a lot. It's more cost effective for them. They can be more competitive on pricing if it's hosted instead of it being a single initiative, a single license at each site. But there's also sharing capabilities, more robust sharing capabilities when we're on a common platform, backhaul platform. So there's pros and cons for both options, but we wanted to be sure the highest reliability and just asking for this. And again, our requirements were pretty, there are requirements haven't been stated.
Right.
Obviously this is, a very robust platform. And so this isn't, our goal really was put together a potential rough order magnitude cost to present to the legislature. There may be more costly and less costly solutions out there, but this solution, as I mentioned, without going into the vendor's name, is one that is used and well accepted by those centers that use this vendor.
Right. The next item regarding reporting capabilities would be integrated as part of that CAD solution, so there wouldn't be any additional cost for that. That would be part of the CAD solution. And I believe similarly for the next one, the CAD to RMS data flow, that cost would also be part of the CAD solution. And certainly if we chose to upgrade the RMS as well, that would be that additional cost that we showed previously. Now addressing the digital logging recorder standard, the working group proposed potentially either option 2 or 3, the major difference being 3 requiring a requirement in statute to follow the specific logging recorder standard. That the working group will leave up to the task force for discussion, and that will most likely be addressed as part of the governance work. So the cost would be incorporated into governance committee work. And there's another task group, of course, putting together a recommendation for governance structure and would include potential costs as well. For core data transfer of telephone, the recommendation was essentially option 1 with to provide Andy and Ally integration. And we note that that's being considered as the migration to rapid SOS by the E911 board occurs. A long term would be to include requirements for this, of course, in the CAD RFP. So any costs would be associated with a license required for a rapid SOS, which we know the E911 board is pursuing a certain number of licenses. We would have to determine if that were sufficient or if additional licenses were required. And then the long-term solution would be including as part of the CAD solution.
I'd like to add, if if 911 doesn't have enough licenses for all the dispatches, that part of our recommendation is that we look at picking up those additional dispatch centers.
That's a good consideration.
Absolutely. Picking up the licenses for those, yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
agreed.
think that's something the task force should look at.
Agreed.
Yeah, we should note that as a recommendation from the working group.
Okay.
There's Ron is coming.
Hello, Ron.
Well, Ron, welcome.
Hello, sorry I am late. I got sort of wrapped up in something.
Yeah.
We're glad you made it.
We are reviewing currently the recommendations that we have discussed previously. We have enhanced these with some recommended costs, or some estimated, estimated costs. If the rest of the working group doesn't mind, I'll back up just a second. The one major one here, Ron, is we did get some ROM pricing, rough order magnitude pricing for a statewide CAD solution with CAD to CAD functionality. And actually that ROM cost came in under $2 million for one of the CAD platforms that the state is familiar with. If RMS were to be added to that, that would be substantially more. That would be an additional $4.5 million. But the CAD ROM pricing itself, at least Rick and I were fairly pleased with what we saw there, and saw that hopefully is something that can be seriously pursued. So moving ahead here, we have we just completed the core data transfer on the telephone, and essentially the comments here are the same, except we've added in some recommendations on cost. So for this last one, the cost would, for the short-term solution, would be potentially additional rapid SOS licenses, and then in the long term, this would be part of the CAD solution. Additional items that we discussed were for fire station alerting and paging was to implement an interface for these systems with the CAD, and to also to continue to transfer this caller to the dispatch center. So this would need to be included in the CAD interface, as additionally some of the requirements once we develop a requirements specification for the statewide CAD. So the costs for that would be incorporated into the CAD system. For GIS and mapping, there was a preference for option 1 in the short term to expand the use of rapid SOS. And long term would be to move to a more robust mapping capability within CAD. Again, these costs would be covered through necessary licenses for rapid SOS, and in the longer term solution as part of the CAD system. Looks like somebody's got a hand up.
Rod?
Yeah, that was me. Just to back up a second, when you're looking at the at adding RMS, would that presume that RMS would replace Valcor?
Yes, going back here, right, the second item here, that costs, yes, assumes that RMS would replace Valcor.
And do we know do we know what the cost of maintaining Valcor is? I don't know if the state pays. I'm sure that we pay them something. So the question is, what does it cost us to keep Valcor? Because I think that, if you say it's going to cost $4 million, but we're not going to have to continue to support something we already own, then that cost can be deducted from the the cost of the new system.
And you're right, Ron, and that's a similar thought that we have had. We are trying to understand what that cost is. I'm sure somebody, someone knows
We-
that. We're trying to pursue that. We don't have that information for you right now, but we will hopefully have that prior to presenting this to the task force on Wednesday.
We do know, Ron, that cost is being paid directly out of department budget. Department of Public Safety is paying for that today.
Right.
And we think we know the cost, but I was unable to get that answer in time for this meeting. I reached out. I just haven't been able to connect, to get it. And so, but yes, you're absolutely right. But there's also, I think it's also important to share that this solution here would include a capability of connecting and displaying Valcor data directly into this CAD, so that that would be achievable, and so you could maintain both existing Valcor. I'm not going to get into should we and why would we. That's not our discussion having here, but that this CAD could consume and post that data out of Valcor.
Okay.
And Dom, I don't know. This is also these are costs over a 5-year period.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
I'll update and put that in to make sure we remember that when presenting to the task force. Okay, moving back, let's see, we're on fire station GIS mapping. Costs would be related to the Rapid SOS license, which again, we have mentioned the E911 board has purchased a number of licenses. We still have to determine if those would be sufficient to cover all dispatch centers. And if not, per Jim's comment, we would recommend that that be increased to cover all dispatch centers within the state. Option 2 would have to be covered as part of the requirements for the statewide CAD. Next item is over-the-top integrated applications. The working group's preference was for option 1 to develop a statewide work group that would recommend specific over-the-top applications and enhance that with a statewide contract vehicle for those preferred applications that would be available to various dispatch centers. The costs for that, for identifying those preferred applications would be work via the governance committee, and then implementing those would be via a local investment decision. Any questions or comments there?
No, that sounds good.
All right.
Nope. Yeah.
Next, we talked about the non-call processing dispatch systems, and put together our initial recommendations here, forwarded to Tier 3, which is also addressing a very similar item here. So the Tier 3 will address this, and it'll most likely be based on what the Tier 1 direction is as well in terms of physical regionalization. For cybersecurity, the working group's recommendation was to implement a common statewide governance, risk, and compliance framework, which would be, as well as put together a top-down approach for dispatch centers to address. This would be, the cost would be just development of this recommendation and framework through governance committee support. And VCOM, we discussed this at length. Of course, the working group's recommendation is to not put any further investment into VCOM and to shut it down and potentially look at reusing equipment as applicable. So there wouldn't be any additional costs here. And we did also determine that the ongoing maintenance of this is has been provided by a grant annually, so it has to be applied for and then awarded on an annual basis. So there wouldn't be any direct state savings, if you will, for shutting this down. But there wouldn't be any, per our recommendation, no further cost
Where's that
allocated to this.
Where's that grant money coming from now?
I'm trying to remember that, Rick. Was that a Department
Yeah.
of Homeland Security grant?
It is coming from the state Homeland Security, the SHIPA grant. So annually,
Okay.
the state receives some funding. That funding has been, gradually been reducing, and who knows if it'll continue going forward. But they have to apply for that annually.
Annual.
So they, that's just an annual, or and so they, of course, if we're going to eliminate it, they would not put the request in.
Right. I just didn't know where, because with the way the federal government is going, they're defunding some of these programs, and I didn't know if we were going to be losing that eventually anyways.
Jim, it was the same conversation we had with them, and so they never know, even year to year, whether or not this will continue to receive funding or not. But so,
and what's the dollar amount that we've been spending on this?
I think
it was in the hundreds of thousands.
I thought it was around 250,000.
Yeah, all right, 200,000 or 300,000.
Yeah, I think 250.
Thank you.
So we
And that
spend
covers.
I'm sorry, we
Go
spend
ahead.
$250,000 maintaining the V system every year.
It includes hardware replacement, repair parts, and some one staff member's salary.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
Hey, any other questions or suggestions here?
No.
All right, and our last item is
Dom, I do have one
Element.
suggestion. Can you go back, please?
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't pick up on this sooner, but under the VCOM, the working group does not recommend any further investments in VCOM, shutdown, and salvage equipment. I wanted to.
Okay, I think we'll need to update that.
I think someone might get the
Amen.
wrong. They might get the wrong impression, but maybe that's really what we mean.
Amen.
You know, when I was younger, my uncle worked for IBM, and when they had test equipment that they were phasing out, like they were replacing it with new stuff on their capital budget, they were required to take it out to the parking lot and sledgehammer it before they put it in the dumpster.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I think that that brings up some ideas here.
We could have take your anger out day. Hey, it's it's beat the equipment day. You're not interoperable. Here's what I think now.
Our final item was the LMR infrastructure improvement. Of course, this is one of the large items to address. The working group's preference was to address it via systems of systems approach, while keeping in mind existing mutual aid groups, catchment areas, and of course, meeting the operational requirements of the stakeholders. So this is the one that is ongoing. We are currently looking at what regional systems are in process or in use today, and what can be done to leverage those and enhance to support those areas that aren't currently covered. So the costs, unfortunately, have to still be in development at this point. In terms of magnitude, I'm pretty confident we're talking tens of millions here. This is obviously not a cheap undertaking. So we're looking at tens of millions, trying to refine that at some level.
It is, but keeping in mind what we've already spent on the VCOM system, which gave us no benefit whatsoever, I think that is a sobering sort of thought.
Yes. Mhm.
So in terms
And,
of that, Dom, are you going to leave that one yet?
uh, yeah, whatever you're, yeah, go
All right.
ahead,
So,
with
one
your
of the
comment.
things
I'm
that,
done with, yeah.
so we're doing some modeling, based, just because, it's supporting this working group and this effort on this one here. This system of system concept is really a very prudent way to go. It is cost effective. It leverages existing investments and coverage areas. And in a simulcasted, regional simulcasted architecture, we multiple departments can benefit over this, and so we were what we're I want to we were looking at we're doing some modeling at the county level, and then of course the proposal that came back from and that came back from Corey's shop regarding at least asking for this equipment without having to make a commitment. They were going to anchor it on zoning or simulcast zones at the district at the police district
The barracks,
region,
the
barracks
VSP
region.
barracks, yeah.
And we don't think that's not that is not the right approach, or that's just my opinion right now. But I don't think that's the right approach for fire and EMS. And so we can architect this, and we did in conversation with Corey. We did say that we don't think that the VSP barracks is the right zone for fire EMS, and he said, well, what do you want me to put in the proposal? And we could at least get that pricing on there. So we think that we should provide them with a recommendation other than VHF at the VSP barracks level. And I wanted to just get your input. What did you all think about? Because they said if you want something different, then please tell us and write it up. So we could write it up, but we didn't want to go ahead and make a decision on behalf of the working group. So if they're going to, again, we're not under any obligation, but it'd be more prudent to get a cost scenario based on a simulcast zone that's more, I don't know, that's more customized to fire and EMS and dispatch centers.
So within the fire service, I can probably, with a little bit of badgering and phone calling, determine what most of the regional mutual aid groups are, and what their current communication situation is. I can get to work on that and see what I can come up with pretty quickly.
That would be very helpful, Ron. Yes, we would appreciate that. We can incorporate that into our planning, certainly.
Yes, and I'm really appreciative of you saying that, offering that, Ron. We have been in the conversation. We say, yeah, we'll take this on with support from the working group. We want to hear from them, and we would need to provide that information to Corey before the end of September. The sooner the better, but before the end of September. They're ready to go to release an RFP. However, their money has not yet been released by the money that they were committed hasn't yet been released by the Department of Department of Justice. So they don't have it yet, but they want to release it as soon as they have that release of the funding. They want to release their RFP. So the sooner we can provide them with our thoughts on that VHF zone, that would be wise.
I think one of the things that we have working for us is that there's something that we have a carrot that's out on the stick, and people in retail know that most of the people show up to the sale like within days of the end of the sale. So if we stress to them that they need to provide this information quickly, lest they be left in the dust and somebody else, get what they could have had, then I suspect that we will get responses.
I like your approach.
Right.
So in other words, we should tell them that we need it by the middle of September, or we need it before the end of August, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Whatever you. Go ahead.
I think that we can get the larger ones pretty quickly. Some of the smaller ones and people who share stuff out of state may be more difficult to track down, because there are a few agencies that have these sort of bizarre mutual aid groups that cross state lines. I think maybe we need to kind of get a map and start drawing in the groups as we find them, and at some point we'll get to the point where there's very little uncolored in space.
Right. Exactly.
If you would like to go and start with a map that we can, help you with, we can have a separate call, put a map up on the screen and draw it in, or, with them. So whatever we can do to help you with that, we're happy to, put in the time to do that.
Sure. I mean, to start out, I can tell you that Addison County, Chittenden County, Grand Isle County, and Franklin County all have fairly straightforward mutual aid groups, and I believe Rutland's is pretty inclusive within that county as well. Outside of that area, and then of course there's the Capital West departments.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that covers a lot of area, and we just have to kind of track down the rest of them.
Okay. All right. Good. That's a good start. That completes our list of work items. Any other comments here or on any of the other previous ones?
No, I'm all
I
set.
don't have any.
So moving forward, we have a few ongoing action items trying to resolve, and we just discussed with Ron putting together those mutual aid groups. Our plan right now, and I would ask for the working group if they are in agreement to provide recommendations to the task force on next Wednesday's meeting. We right now have asked for a position on the agenda, so that'll be we'll have a time frame there if we're ready. My assumption is we are ready based on what we have. Thoughts from the group?
I think we can go ahead and ask for that, our recommendations that we have filled out now, and with some follow-up work on some other issues.
Right. I think that's where we are. I don't know if we need immediately need a next meeting. I think we can schedule that kind of as necessary based on what comes out of the task force or what ongoing work we have.
Yes, like some of the things. Oh, sorry, Jim, you go.
I was going to say, based on the recommendations we give them and the outstanding items, the task force can tell us if we need to go back and continue working on those items or not, or if the task force will deal with them directly.
Yep, and some of them we just mentioned. Getting some support on the simulcast zones for the VHF network for fire and EMS. So we're still working on that, but that doesn't. And of course, we still don't really have a budget yet for what that would cost. I think that also has to come out of governance. We need to, if we haven't included that in there, some of that governance working group on radio would be part of one of would be a prudent recommendation to that governance would also include a working group that's focused on land mobile radio for fire and EMS. we didn't spend, one of the things we didn't do on this, and I don't know how we address it, but we didn't really talk about local law enforcement, and what radio they have. And I mean, we didn't, and I don't want to ignore it, but I don't know what you all think about it. If we need to spend time on that as well. We have been talking about of fire and EMS, which is prudent because they have the greatest needs when it comes down to mutual aid and interoperability. Their challenges are different, but we haven't really talked about law enforcement radio, and I don't know what you all think about whether or not that's something that we should spend a little bit more time on. Dom and I have been talking about it, and we had some ideas on it, but we didn't want to abandon that. We may not, maybe work that we still need to consider.
Okay, Ron?
So the reason I had my hand up was a similar question to the law enforcement thing. I mean, how are we going to process the EMS thing? I mean, for example, in Grand Isle County, the EMS agencies share the same dispatch system as the fire agencies.
Mm-hmm.
In other places, that is true with some agencies and some others. But I think that we've got a bit of a can of worms in that, you're going to have some individual agencies that just sort of insist on doing their wanting, that they've got the we want our own thing, and others who might be willing to participate with fire agencies. For the most part, my observation in our situation here in Grand Isle County is that EMS agencies really do not use up a lot of communications bandwidth. You send them somewhere, they're on their way. They don't really need mutual aid unless they need a lift assist or something, but they don't use up a lot of airtime. So it's not a problem, I don't think, to do that, unless, of course, they're going to be to object to having to hear the fire people doing what they do. So how are we going to handle this? I mean, if we offer something to fire and potentially something to law enforcement, I see that we will have a sticky wicket when the EMS people get wind of it and want to know why we have not done anything for them.
I think it's important. I don't know, Michael. Can you talk? Maybe you could talk for that community.
I guess I'm missing what would EMS be missing?
Can you go back to slide 13, Tom?
So, Mike, where I'm going with this is that, like in a lot of places, Franklin County, Grand Isle County, Addison County, Chittenden County, there's some frequencies that are used for most of fire agencies in those counties. But the EMS agency, Addison County has a number of different frequencies that are being used for the various EMS agencies there. You've got Virgins, you've got Bristol, you've got Middlebury,
Brandon.
Isn't Brandon in? Yeah. So
I don't want to interrupt, but I want to share a different screen. Maybe help us discuss this. Go ahead, Ron. But
so now,
we've got mapping, for example, of the these are the EMS dispatch areas by town.
Right, and so even if you look at Addison County, I assume that purple area is Shelburne. But Shelburne is dispatching the agencies that they dispatch, the EMS agencies that they dispatch in Addison County on what, 3 different frequencies?
Yeah, we have.
'Cause you don't dispatch Brandon.
No, we don't do Brandon. We don't do Bristol any longer either at this point for EMS. But we were dispatching Bristol on their frequency, Virgins on theirs, and I know Middlebury and Brandon were on different frequencies.
Right, and I assume
also
that they still are. So,
yep.
What is it that we're going to throw out there, and how do we make whatever, something that's I mean, I don't want to throw them out in the cold.
Mhm.
But I
I don't
think
think
that,
we're,
go ahead.
I don't think we're throwing them out in the cold here, personally, myself. I was looking at the UHF and VHF side of the spectrum is how I was
Right.
looking at it. Police are primarily in the UHF. Fire and EMS are primarily in the VHF.
Right.
Yes, some EMS agencies, Charlotte Rescue, member of Charlotte Rescue Forever. Same with Shelburne Rescue. We operate on, the Shelburne operates on the frequency with their fire. Charlotte operates on their frequency with their fire. The only two agencies that we dispatched for that were EMS on their own frequency was Virgin's Rescue and Bristol Rescue. They chose to go that route.
Right. So Ron, I think yeah, I get a grasp of what you're saying, but I think big picture here, right, is that is an utter cluster, right? With all these services that are on their own frequency in the midst of a disaster, right? That's half the
Oh, I'm not
problem with
disputing that.
No, right. But I think that someone at the highest level needs to say to everyone, right, that okay, this is not 1960 anymore, and Chittenden County doesn't need 732 frequencies for 10 departments. We need to consolidate and work as a team here. I think the one thing that I did bring up before that would maybe solve some of this and operationally is a needed thing in the system is fire needs to be on dispatch agencies, and fire and EMS need to have some primary operations channel. So
Operational
as a,
channel,
for
yeah.
instance, right, you would have your main frequency that goes out. So for us, fire alarm, right, goes out to all the centers or all the services around. But let's say we have a 3-alarm fire with people trapped, which we've had several times in our community, 3, 4, 5-alarm fires. The system, that channel, single dispatch channel, gets overwhelmed dramatically. Now you bring an MCI or a multi-patient event into that same thing. It's an utter cluster because we just don't have the capacity for dispatch frequency. So what needs to happen is you need, just like many other bigger systems, once that's dispatch is going to say EMS, you're going to channel 2, and then that commander then is operating to dispatch on channel 2 for any additional resources. So that would be one thing that I think the system itself needs to improve. But yes, you may have an agency that says, we want to stay on our single channel frequency that we've had since 1960, but again, I think we need to get to making this easier for all so that in the event there was a mass casualty in Virgins and now our ambulance is coming over to assist in a statewide emergency, we have the ability to have a frequency to go to. It's too much.
Oh no, I mean I agree with all that. I think that I mean I'm very comfortable going out in the fire community and saying, look, we all need to learn how to play well with each other, which is something that we don't all do, or we're simply not going. People are going to not take us seriously, and they're not going to give us money or help us fix our problems. I can't say that in the EMS community because I lack the ability to say, hey, I'm one of you, and I'm just as at fault as you are. And to play that card. So I think that, and I think I'm gaining some support from some of the leaders in the fire service on that topic. But I think that we need to sort of wade into the EMS community and start building that sentiment so that when it comes time to do something, it doesn't become a mess.
Yeah, for sure. Do we know in our data, Dom or Rick, how many EMS agencies across the state are operating like Virgins, let's say, on a single, their own private frequency, let's say? I mean, it can't be a ton across the state.
I don't think it's that. I don't
ahead.
think it's that many agencies out there that function in that role.
Right.
There's a lot of agencies that their fire, first response, or fire and ambulance operate on the same frequency
Correct.
together.
Right.
But
So that's what I'm saying. Are we talking like 4 EMS agencies across the state that, are operating on a single,
No,
their
I mean,
own,
I think it's
Yeah,
more
we
than that.
really don't know,
I know
Michael.
I, within Addison County, Virgins, Middlebury, and Brandon are all using separate frequencies. I think it's primarily the transport services that have staked out their own frequencies. The first response squads tend to be fire people, so they're using fire dispatch channels. Jim could probably elaborate more on that, but that's the way that I see most of it.
Yes.
So maybe some homework, Rick and Dom, can we pull that information maybe for the next meeting? Or even just circulate that to us in email, and I certainly can work on that on the back end with the VAA, and just,
We
bring up
can.
this topic and see what the shakeup would be, and would they be willing to switch over to a more widely used dispatch frequency in their own area.
Michael, we have a very robust capability of researching the FCC database to determine all licensees. I mean, the data's there.
Yep.
And we regularly, we do an update when they do an update. So we have these capabilities. And if you're asking us, we can go ahead and provide you with those EMS agencies that have their own individual channel. What I
Yep.
can't tell you is if they're fire and EMS, I mean, sometimes a license is held by an
Yeah,
agency
not
that's
clear.
fire, and it's also used by EMS, but we can identify individual EMS agencies that have a a license frequency. That's certainly something we can do, and we can provide you with that information. We can run that search pretty quickly.
So I can actually help you with that.
Great.
When EMS agencies fill out their applications to renew their licenses with the Department of Health,
Yep.
they have to indicate their frequencies and their two-tone paging tones and everything.
Sure.
The Department of Health, I assume, has a database of that they could provide us with.
You're funny. You are really quite funny, Ron. Yes, they have a database, but I can guarantee you they won't be able to pull that information, just like they haven't been able to pull that information on various other questions we've asked around the other task force that's working on the EMS issues currently. So that would be a stretch, I think.
Well, okay.
Without manually going through it. I doubt that those are actually in a format to report off, but.
Well, I think it's a good challenge to give Ron. He likes
We
the
can ask,
challenge.
yeah.
Yeah, I say go for it, Ron. See if you strike gold.
Yeah. I mean, this has been a headache for a long time. I remember when we got the first wave of Homeland Security money, one of the projects that the state embarked upon was, I mean, they gave us all UHF radios allegedly to talk to the state police, but that all fell apart because they didn't actually tell us when and where we were supposed to use them. So all the chiefs pretty much took the microphones out of the trucks, and because they were afraid that bad things would happen. But more importantly, more importantly, the VSP installed VHF radios in all of their cruisers, and they put this sort of hodgepodge of frequencies in there that the troopers didn't know what they were. In many cases, the frequencies weren't actually correct; they were just guesses. And to this day, I don't know where all of that has gone. I can tell you that I have never been contacted by a trooper on VHF. So if they're still installing and reinstalling those radios, it's a total waste of effort.
They may have taken them out into the parking lot and smashed them. Like,
I think
it's different in different areas. I know our guys here in the troop do have our dispatch frequency. They have used it. And Ron is exactly right. We did have the mics like literally taken off the radios and stuffed in the glove box. And probably still honestly do. Well, actually, I think we put some back on, but there did come a time where, a new lieutenant moved in and said, no, put the mic on there. And if you need us, you call, right, us directly. So we've been given kind of the open communication that if we need to get a hold of them directly on their channel, we can do that. We're not going to get a letter or get screamed at by them or dispatch or some high-ranking VSP guy. But it was like that. Ron's exactly right. There was no formal thing. It was just, hey, we're going to give you these radios so that you can have this, communication channel. But there was really no plan with it.
Well, we're learning a lot of valuable information about what not to do going forward.
Yeah.
So
and we've since we've worked really closely on the kind of the tactical side of working with VSP because of the active shooter scenario, and in our lovely area we've had numerous shootings and numerous search warrants and numerous opportunities to work with a tactical team. So we've actually purchased in one of our main command vehicles and a couple portables, dual band, dual VHF, UHF portables. Again, because we identified that in tactical situations that you need other ability to monitor and transmit on those frequencies directly to law enforcement.
These are really good lessons, and this tells us that going forward, it's valuable to program your radios. Well, to have the right radios, obviously, but to program your radios so that you can, facilitate, real-time mutual aid.
Yeah, and there's no question that's really where we all should be. The problem is, as we all know, a dual band radio, mobile and portable, they're not cheap, right?
No.
So we purchased one for our command vehicle, and then we purchased a couple portables, but to go that way statewide, but it does allow you in these circumstances to go direct with the commanding officer or sergeant that's on the scene rather than yelling through the styrofoam cup to dispatch and then back down. We know that is a significant delay across the entire network.
So the reality of what we bring to this table is that while we may not have all the actual answers as to what to do, we can tell you a multitude of ways not to do it.
Right.
Exactly.
So, with that said, I mean, just to go back to that, that slide on radio, I think what you just brought up, for EMS, Ron, I think we have an approach for that. We can identify the frequencies unique to EMS, and we can share that back with Michael, so that he could, talk to those folks. But a goal of providing a simulcast zone that supports fire EMS sounds like a reasonable approach, to the plan. But I don't know, what boundaries, and so we can give it some additional thought, but we want to be able to be. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm going
Or
to throw
Jim.
my hat in here.
Sure.
Sitting in the dispatch chair, that being
Yep.
able to punch out that tone to one channel for all my fire EMS is the dream come true for me. So I'm not jumping all over the place and having to answer all over the place. So it's not so much what am I doing for EMS, what am I doing to streamline the operations of receiving the call and dispatching the call out to the responders. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
Sure.
I don't look at this, I'm doing something for police, I'm doing something for fire, or doing something for EMS. I'm looking at doing it for all. I've
Right.
got one channel that I dispatch all my police on. I've got umpteen channels that I dispatch my fire and EMS on. I'd like to narrow that down to make my
Well,
operations.
that's when we looked at the catchment areas per PSAP. you know, being an approach, but about,
Well,
Tom,
my
you,
catchment area is different than some of the dispatches out there.
yes, of
You
course.
know, some of the
Sure.
dispatches may be in my catchment area as far as the PSAP goes. So it would work for them as well. But, you know, you do have some of these other catchment areas that are not, you know, I look at Woodstock. Woodstock does their police, fire, EMS. I think they do a neighboring department too. I'm not sure. So their catchment area for their dispatch is different than the catchment area for the PSAP.
So we have mapped PSAP and dispatch center areas. So, and yes, they're all over the place.
Yeah,
And
that's
for
what you
some,
saw. Yeah.
yeah,
saw
and
that.
for some, I mean, if you
Dispatch.
look at EMS, fire, PD, they're different per dispatch center. So
And I
they may have different affiliations.
and I look at the, you know, what we're talking about here, mutual aid groups and catchment areas. They may overlap, they may not overlap. You know, I may have a catchment area that covers multiple mutual aid areas. In my case, I do. I have Grand Isle County, parts of Chittenden County, parts of Addison County. So whatever we can do to cover the most of that, you know, my Addison County areas, they're going to be on one frequency probably, and my Chittenden County is going to be on a different one, and my
Sure.
Grand Isle will be on a third one. But still, I'm down to one channel for each area.
Right.
I'd love to have one channel for all of them, but
Well, you
it's
can
done-
dispatch into different zones too, but you know,
Right.
ideally, the dispatching in a zone would cover all of the agencies that you need to dispatch to, because you're right. It's a tremendous burden on dispatch to have to, you know, to have to go multiple different channels. How many channels do you dispatch over?
oh God, Addison County is my worst because I dispatch New Haven off New Haven and some other agencies off one tower. Addison's off a different tower. Virgin's off a different tower. Ferrisburg's off another tower. They're all using the same frequency. Moncton and
Yeah.
Starksville are off another tower. So there's 5 different transmitters I'm using on the same frequency.
That's exactly how Central Vermont is set up too. So this is why these having these zones and consolidating into, you know, into shared networks, the system of systems approach is so much more efficient, both
Exactly.
operationally and investment wise, that, you know, but that you know, consolidate those networks is a prudent approach. And that's,
And
you
that's
know,
what I look at it as I'm doing it for all the fire and EMS agencies. You know, if I have some agencies that will probably still want to be on their own, I understand that. I've heard some of the complaints from the fire people. We don't want to hear their calls in the middle of the night, vice versa. But my thing is I'm taking calls, and the goal is for me to get that call in and out as fast as possible. That's our end goal here.
Exactly. That's why you have a closed mute channel on your pager. It only
That's right.
goes off for you. If you want to listen to everybody else, you put it on channel the zone C or D or whatever.
Right.
But that's the way it should be. You're exactly it. You're creating a lot of work.
However, though, when someone doesn't respond because they didn't get the page or they're not available, then you got to be able to page another agency. So you know, there are some challenges to that as well. But agreed, these are area, you know, by talking about them, every time we talk about it, we get a little bit more insight into how to potentially solve the problem. But it's not going to get solved without getting those individual players at the table to discuss and to be part of the solution. That's why I say we should, you know, this has got to also fit under governance.
Yep.
Right.
So can we go back to we just one more thing before we go to closing the meeting, go to give the public a chance to comment. Who is going to make from the
left.
Everybody's left. Okay. So, well, at least we just ask him. But who is going to, of the working group? I mean, the slides that we have here, these slides are acceptable, you know, to you all for presenting to the working group. I mean, it goes over each of the items that were captured
Right.
under the working group.
Yes.
And if this format works for you all, or we could take a different approach. I mean, so these slides, the way Dom designed these was so that they could be presented to the task force. So if this is a acceptable format, that's great. If not, let us know and we could go ahead and change it before the task force meeting.
I like this layout. I'm used to it from the tier 3 meetings as well. So
Right.
Okay.
Good.
So was
I'm
someone
assuming you're
from the
doing this
working
in
group?
governance.
Yeah, will someone from the working group make the presentation? I would assume, and I don't, how you want to do that, but I mean, we could do the speaking, but makes sense to us if one of you wanted to take the lead, but we'll be happy to do whatever you need us to do.
It doesn't bother me either way.
Yeah, we'll trim it down to, I guess, these slides basically starting from here through 13. These.
Yeah.
I think that would be my suggestion in terms of what we want to present to the task force.
Yep. Unless Ron or Mike has anything else they want to add to that.
Anybody hear me?
Yes, we
Yeah.
hear you now.
All
I don't
right.
know. I had some kind of a mute problem.
Hmm.
I think that, one of the most difficult things, in particular for like the legislature to understand, is the LMR part of this. When you start talking about radio things, people's eyes glass over. They start looking out the window. They start looking at their fingernails to see if they're neatly trimmed. And so I think that the example that Jim just gave of how things work in Addison County, where by virtue of the fact that, they have a pile of different agencies which are on the same frequency, but must be paged off, and, you have to communicate to them from different sites. You're doing a ridiculous amount of work, and you're tying up the radio a lot for a long time, when one set of stacked pages on a simulcast voting system could take care of the whole entire thing.
Boom.
And
Yeah.
I think that if we had like sort of like a little map of Addison County with the different towns, and we sort of colorized them so that you could say, all right, when we go to page these agencies, we're using this, and when we go to page those agencies, we're using that, and we may be sending them to the same fire, but we need to make 5 different pages to do it. I think that's a concept that is easy to understand, and it reinforces the benefit of having a simulcast voting system.
We
agree.
could map that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I love that. And I think mapping that or putting that into the slide when Jim maybe talks about that as a visual. And then maybe Dom or Rick, you could come up with one other example, maybe in the southern part of the state, if there's
Mhm.
another one that you could do the same one, and maybe give 2 examples of that, because I think that really does drive it home that we can make this system so much better and so much more effective.
Good. Yeah. Good suggestion. Yeah.
And I also want to drive the point that it's not, like I said earlier, not just operational efficiency. There are financial incentives, of consolidating and having, even for the towns that pay for this. I mean, if you consolidate, you might be able to eliminate some towers, or you might have duplicated service coverage. I mean, there are a lot of benefits from going to, a more regional approach radio network. And we just need to convince the locals of that, because, they don't trust anybody but themselves. Let's be honest. So, I mean, that's how it goes. And they haven't had a reason to trust anybody else. So, we got to give them that reason to trust that they are going to be the architects.
Why fix something that isn't broke?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
their mentality.
I think that very early on in the task force thing, we kind of, made the observation that all of these people have gone out and tried to and figured out how to make things work in the absence of a lot of money and any help from outside. And so, they have a certain amount of pride in the fact that they figured out how to duct tape and baling wire it together and make it work. But you kind of have to sell the advantages, and certainly that, being able to, unify your paging system and everything else, and have everybody in the entire mutual aid system hear when some particular unit got on the air and said they're going to the fire that you're going to, and the shared cost of repairs. I mean, a lightning strike can cause a lot of damage, and if that's shared over 14 or 15 towns instead of just you, that's an advantage in itself.
Exactly.
Those, I don't know if we have to convince the task force of that, although we can, begin preparing that in our Wednesday meeting. But you're absolutely right. The legislature needs to see that simply in graphic form, like you just, talked about, and the savings. We can put some models together for that. We've done that very frequently for, a lot of this. What we're talking about here is not uncommon, a challenge to overcome. Locals, willing to integrate into a more regional approach. It's Vermont's not the only place, but you guys are you're one of the remaining bastions of I got to do it myself because nobody else does it better than me.
Yankee stubbornness.
Agreed.
Okay. So where are we? So we're
Public comment. All of our public people have left. So
all right. We're not going to schedule a next meeting for the time being, correct?
Correct.
Did we settle on who's going to present the slides at the task force meeting?
I guess I can if nobody else wants to jump up and down on it. You could just send me the slides in advance so I can.
Yep. We'll send it to
Absolutely.
everybody in advance.
We'll do that. We'll do. We'll trim down to those particular work item slides, and we'll work on adding a graphical description. Jim, if you could send us maybe description of the different towns within Addison County, we can put that map together.
Yeah, I will get you the information tonight.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Mike. Michael, we'll see you.
You're welcome.
All right.
Have a great day.
Yeah, everybody have a good weekend too, all right? Thank
too.
you all.
Well, somebody's got to formally adjourn, right?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
There you go.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Mike,
All right.
see you guys.
Bye.
A good weekend.
Well done.